Hey there, folks. It is Toya here with another tip to help you today prepare to apply. The first thing I want to talk about is the timeline. So, you're made up your mind that you want to go back to school and you need to figure out which schools you're going to apply to, but you also need to come up with a list of important info. The first would be the deadline. So, say for instance, if you are planning to apply in 2021, then take a look at that school's website and check out the deadline for 2020. If the deadline is, for instance, December 1st of this year, then it'll likely be around the same time next year. Institutions don't typically change those deadlines so drastically where their applicant pool is unaware. So, which brings me to another good point. Get yourself on the mailing list. If you haven't already, reach out to the institution to sign up and get more information so that you will be aware of any important dates or events that will be forthcoming over the next cycle. Okay. The other thing that you want to have in your timeline is the required components of the application for each and every school you're going to apply to, because they vary from institution to institution, of course. But just to give you a sense of what is typically required, there's the application fee, there are the supplemental materials, and there are the standardized tests. So when I say supplemental materials, I'm talking about your transcripts, your recommendation letters, your resume, and a personal statement if it's required. And then when I talk about the standardized tests, I'm referring to the SAT, ACT, GMAT, GRE, LSAT. You can take a look at ets.org if your institution is requiring a test, to get more information about testing centers in your location, which tests they have available by date. There are some useful tips and practice tests on that website as well to help you study and get yourself the highest score that you can. But be mindful too. I'd say, doing that a year in advance will give you a good opportunity to spend some time and really focus on that standardized test. Now, note that not each institution is going to require that standardized test, so you just want to check in with each school to make sure you need it before registering yourself to take the test, because they are pretty pricey. Oh, I forgot to include also the TOEFL test, or IELTS for international students who need to submit this test. This test is for those who have not. How does it go? The IELTS and TOEFL scores are required for students whose primary language of instruction was not English. So, say for instance, if you got a 4-year degree from your home country, which is outside of the US, and they did not teach you in English, then a TOEFL score is going to be required with your application, in addition to the other standardized tests that may be required. So be careful about that, and definitely look at the school's website because they typically have that information readily available there. The next tip I'm going to offer is I'm sorry, looking at my notes, I'm like, where am I? Find out if your school has like a minimum score for acceptance. So with a GRE, is there a minimum that they typically like to see from applicants who are admitted into the program? They may not share that information. It's okay, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And if it is available, that's great. That gives you something to aspire to and keep in mind when you're studying for the test and when you walk away. I know with the GRE, they give you the quantitative and qualitative score, and then you before you leave, and then your writing sample is graded and will be available to you at a later date. So yeah, it's great to know if you can get that information. Keep in mind that the test that you take, the standardized test that you take, typically takes up to 15 business days from the date that you take that test before it becomes available to the institutions to which you're applying. So if you are taking the test and the deadline is December 1st, you cannot take that test on November 20th. You can't. It's not guaranteed. That's just too late. I mean, well, you could. Yeah, no, you can't. No, don't do that. I'd say if you are taking the test for the first time, try if you can to get that test done in October for a December deadline. You want to give yourself ample time for mail to get lost and get to the institution still on time, because more than likely a deadline is a deadline is a deadline, and it's usually firm. So there may be no deviation from that. So I just want you to be prepared as soon as you can. Also, if you've taken a standardized test that's required and the score expires before the application deadline for the program that you're interested in, you want to reach out to the institution's admission staff to inform them of that and inquire as to whether or not you would need to submit a new score. And if you know this, if this is your case, I would suggest doing that in September. Typically, application cycles open for the new year, the new academic year, anywhere from August to September. So I would reach out to the admissions office at that time and say, hey, I see that my score is gonna be expiring, you know, November 29th, and your deadline is December 1st. Would you be willing to accept my score as it is? And if no, then you still have time to prepare yourself to retake the test, okay? The next tip is something that I talked about in my last video, which is applying to several schools. Again, I don't have a firm number. It's up to you. I'd say, you know, for me, maybe 5 would be a comfortable number, but you know, there are so many other factors that I don't need to consider that you may. So it's up to you. And keep in mind that most schools have an application fee, so you want to factor that into your decision making as well, as in addition to any out-of-state costs, because that's real. Thousands of dollars just for out-of-state fees can hugely impact your decision and your list of schools that you're going to apply to. My third tip is going to be to know your audience and ensure that your application reflects that. So what I mean by that is, if you are applying to Temple University, you want your personal statement and your recommendation letters to reflect that. Don't submit documentation to Temple University that has, for instance, Tennessee State University in those personal statements or recommendation letters. It's pretty off-putting to admissions panels folks. So you want to take the time to read over your personal statement and cater it to each of the schools that you're applying to, in addition to supplying your recommenders with a list of schools that you're thinking of applying to so that they can alter their letters as well. And I think my last tip today is going to be just to know that your application is going to very likely be reviewed holistically. So everything that you submit as part of your application package is going to make up who you are and whether or not you're going to be accepted into your program. So don't think that because your GMAT score was not high enough in your mind that that's an automatic rejection from the admissions panel. They are going to consider just about everything that you submit. So you want to put your best foot forward and know that you have the most control over your personal statement. It's your story. You know, if they have a word count, stick to that. Don't go over. If they're asking for 1,000 words, don't go over 1,000 words, because if you can't pay attention to instructions during the application process, that gives them every indication that you won't pay attention and follow instructions while you're in your program. So it's just something that you can fix easily. So stick to that number count. And then, you know, talk about your journey. What made you think that you wanted to apply for this particular program? Why do you want to study that program at this school? What do you hope to gain while you're there in that program? So this is a good place for you to insert any faculty's research that you become interested in. Let them know that in your personal statement. And then how do you impact the field once you get your degree? What's your career day gonna look like? What are you hoping to get with this degree, and how do you plan to impact the world with the knowledge that you've gained? Okay. And I think that's it. I do want to talk a little bit about the application deadline. So I've said a lot about, you know, December 1st, submitting your application by the deadline. Don't think that you have to wait until the deadline date to submit your application. You can submit it early. Once that application season opens in either August or September, you can start submitting materials. So know that you and thousands of other applicants have the same mind to wait until the very last minute so that they have the most control over their application, and then release it to the admissions office and just wait for a decision. If you do that, know that you're one of a whole lot of people. So don't call the office on December 2nd or December 3rd and ask to get a status update on your application. It's just not possible. There is no way that the admissions office is going to be able to, one, receive all those applications that have been submitted, and two, go through the bins and bins of mail that they're going to get of supplemental materials from everybody who's waited until the last minute to submit their applications. Okay? So I'm begging you not to do that. If you have capacity to submit your application early, do so. If you can send your documents early, do so. You can request to get, you know, X number of copies of your transcripts sent to the institutions to which you're applying, or have them all sent to yourselves. Don't open them so that they remain official, and then send them off to the schools you're applying to, and they can hold on to them for you until your application is received. But what I'm trying to help you avoid is that moment where you wait until the deadline and submit your application, and then it takes, I'm just going to be honest, it's probably going to take an admissions office about 1 to 2 weeks after the deadline date to process, to receive all of the documents and applications that they've received, and put all of the documents to match the documents they've received to the application. So Don't expect an update on the 2nd or 3rd. Don't bombard the office with phone calls and emails, because what you're doing is actually slowing them down. Know that they get tons of loose pieces of paper. There's going to be a recommendation letter that's sent by your instructor with just your name on it, and it's very easy to mismatch those documents to applications. So definitely give them time to review the materials they receive, add it to the right application, and then just keep checking your status online if that's where you submitted your application, because that's probably going to be the first place they send you a status update after your application has been touched. In my next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the application itself. So I hope you'll join me for my next video. It's going to be in a couple days, but I feel like this is enough to sort of get you thinking about next steps in terms of choosing your school and how to prepare yourself to submit an application. Let me know in the comments if you have, if you have any questions, or if you have an idea for a different tip. I'm open to suggestions, and I thank you for watching. Hope you're having a great Friday the 13th. Have a good weekend, guys. Bye.